You guys have plenty of hot takes about Final Fantasy XIV, but I think it's only fair that I provide my own. I'm stepping into the arena today, and it's time to give my hot takes about Final Fantasy XIV and 7.2. Let's get right on into this, shall we? Hello everybody, I am Jmulls of Jmulls Gaming. And for the first hot take / maybe this is a cold take, who knows? I have a feeling that may be a common theme throughout this video. Let's talk Black Mage. It got reworked with 7.2, and has been rather controversial because it removed a lot of pain points from the actual job's design and management. I've been playing around with it since, and I kinda really like it. For single target, there is a bit of an over-reliance on just spamming Fire 4, don't get me wrong, and maybe I'm just a sucker for a good old explosion, but it feels good to play in my opinion. I like the faster pace all the spellcasts have now. Longest spellcast normally is an off-putting element in design when it comes to class design and MMORPGs for me. The fact that Black Mage just plays faster, and I also personally like the fact those pain points and upkeeping Astral Fire are just gone now. It went from a job where I was so annoyed having to level the thing because my retainer's a Black Mage as well. In every expansion I would curse myself because I would have to level Black Mage, and I wasn't that big of a fan of it for the longest time because my retainer is a Black Mage, because for some reason I thought that was a good idea back in the day. And now with 7.2, I'm actively going out to play more Black Mage just because I find it enjoyable. I get why long-term fans of Black Mage don't like the new changes, but the changes pretty much rectified every pain point that I had with Black Mage and every element that was off-putting to me. Normally I prefer to play melee or tanks, but Black Mage has been quite nice. Okay, let's cool things off a little bit. That pun will make a lot more sense. Now let's cool things off a bit, and that's going to make a lot more sense when I actually give this take. This game needs more snow zones. Oh my god. Look, I know in terms of the hierarchy of what does this game need, this is probably relatively low on the list, but let me just speak my mind. We had Heavensward, right? Which was a cold-themed expansion, and I love that aesthetic. And then we had Stormblood, which was a bunch of deserts and green. Then we had Shadowbringers, which is just great overall, but again, no snow. Then we had Endwalker, where we got Golemald, which, yeah, by the strictest definition, is a snow zone, but it's pretty much just a giant square, where half of it is a ruined city, but, that's all we got. And then we got Dawntrail, which is, again, more deserts and green. I yearn for the feeling of zone design from the days of Heavensward so much. And while there are still elements of zone design that feel magical or just cool overall, a lot of my favorite visuals in Final Fantasy XIV outside of Ultima Thule largely now come from either raids or the dungeons instead of the actual zone design, and that used to not always be the case back in the days of Heavensward, where the zones were so gorgeous and beautiful, and also, I got some dang snow. I liked the snow. I hope from here on out we can get more zones that are a bit more high fantasy, instead of here's 3 jungles. Here's the mandatory desert zone for the expansion. Though in retrospect, I guess Endwalker didn't have a desert, unless we want to count Golemald, but look, all I've had since pretty much Heavensward has been Golemald, and I mean, come on. Next up, let's talk Sphene. Look, I know the 7.0 story was really controversial for a lot of people. It's not my favorite ever either, and I have a lot of big issues when it comes to Dawntrail's writing outside of 7.2. The one element that I always liked though was Sphene. Even back in 7.0, I liked her as a character, and I liked her as an antagonist. Someone who was willing to forsake every other world just to preserve and safeguard her own people. A lot of those story beats do kind of line up with Endwalker, in some ways at least, especially with the final zone, and I don't think Sphene is the best villain this game has ever had at anything like that. Not even close. But in an expansion story that was largely rough for me, that I had massive issues with, she was one of the few bright spots for me, in terms of overall writing, motivation, cool design, and also just being an FF9 reference, and I love FF9. And now with 7.2, I think the character's even better than ever, even though it's technically a different character. If we want to lump in the story of Endless Sphene with this current Sphene, because it's not they're unrelated to each other. From what I saw with 7.2, I think Sphene is on her way to becoming one of my favorite characters in the entire game. I don't think she'll ever pass Emmett, Selk, Meteon, and Xenos for me, but I think she can go into an upper tier of characters for me. They just have to really stick the landing with 7.2. 7.3 and not freaking kill her. But yeah, overall, I like Sphene as a character, even the .0 version, and I'll fight on this issue. Next up, the Nier raids. They're my favorite alliance raid this game has ever had. I love the Nier raids from start to finish. I ran them so much because I love Nier Automata and Nier Replicant. I'm a big Nier fan. So every element to this raid series just hit with me. I like the story for the most part. It's not the greatest thing of all time, but I like the story. I love the music. I like pretty much all the boss fights. And I know that part can be kind of contentious for people, but I did enjoy them. And the environments, dude, as a Nier fan, chef's kiss. Going back to the bunker, great stuff. I loved it. I ran the Nier raid so many times because I wanted the glamour, I wanted the equestrian rolls, I wanted the minions. When they eventually added the pod mounts, I absolutely got those frame one. I know some people absolutely despise these things, but I'm not one of those people. I love the Nier raids, unabashedly so. Glory to mankind. Okay, next up, I kind of addressed this a little bit early in this video, but I'm gonna really talk about it here. Is it starting to tick anyone else off that the zone design in the dungeons is way cooler than the zone design out in the world? Or is that just like me? Especially with 7.2, the environment in that dungeon, like going down beneath the surface and just seeing the Everkeep in this wide open space, and then going inside the Everkeep, and the environmental design, to me, is way cooler and better than anything else in terms of zone design that we got in Dawntrail. Besides, like, maybe Heritage Found, because I think that zone's really cool, and Living Memory before we turned it off. But, like, the Everkeep, like, that sense of scale, the environmental design, that aesthetic, I loved it so much. And this happens all the time nowadays when it comes to Final Fantasy XIV for me, where I prefer the environments in the dungeon compared to what is actually in the open world. Or, well, I guess the actual zones, if you want to be technical about it. But still, I do hope a day can come where the overworld and the zones we go to for just leveling and exploration, well, exploration quotation marks there, can one day have the sense of scale and just wow factor that a lot of these environments in the dungeons provide. I mean, thank God for Explorer mode, so we can at least go back there and just look around if we want to. But with dungeons being pretty much just a bunch of linear corridors, I can't explore these zones as much as I would want to if they weren't dungeons. It's one of the reasons I hope Final Fantasy XIV eventually goes down a path of having more open world based content, because then there'd be more of an argument for Square Enix to devote more resources to like taking these dungeon zones and making like little zones out of them for additional content, not just the dungeon itself. I would love to see that direction. I don't really see it happening. It would be really cool if it did though, at least to me. Next up, I'm not even going to call this a hot take because I hope to God it's a cold take, and I want this to be like absolute zero in terms of takes. Howling Blade, final fight of the Cruiserweight division of Arcadian. That guy. Make him the next Final Fantasy XIV job. Lightsaber and like little Gundam funnels included. Make that a job. And for the love of Christ, if you make it a healer like you did with Sage, look, it's too cool of a concept. It needs to appeal to me specifically. I need it to be either a tank or melee DPS. Yeah, that we have too many melee DPS. I like them, okay? What I need is the lightsaber class to be the new job, especially if Final Fantasy XIV continues to go in the direction of being more and more sci-fi. A sci-fi themed job for either melee DPS and or tanks. I would appreciate that personally, because it does feel a little bit goofy to walk around as a paladin in paladin-appropriate attire in Solution 9. It is pretty funny, don't get me wrong. It does feel a little bit goofy, and I want to not, stand out like a sore thumb. And no, I'm not counting freaking Gunbreaker in terms of a sci-fi job. It's cool, don't get me wrong, I'm just saying. FF8, which is a little bit sci-fi, but I digress. Okay, look, we can get technical all we want. What I'm just saying, though, and the important thing here that I don't want to get lost in the sauce of technicalities, is I want that job, I want Howling Blade's job to be playable. So help me God if it's a limited job, I want it playable. Can you imagine the lightsaber glams? Can you just imagine it for a second? I want it, I need it, and imagine the way Yoshi P teases it at the fan fest, right? Is he walks out like Luke Skywalker, but like distinctive enough so it's not copyright infringement. How cool would that be? I think for the final hot take of the video, I'm going to talk about the music. I absolutely love songs like Shadowbringers, Footfalls. We don't need to mention Smile. It's a fine song, just not for me. And you know what? That's fine. And I know Nobuo Uematsu doesn't do music for Final Fantasy XIV anymore, and that he is such a brilliant composer that it's really hard to replicate what he can actually do. I get that. I understand it. I would love another song for Final Fantasy XIV that is in the style of Answers, Dragon Song, or even Revolutions, which I think is one of the most underrated songs in all of Final Fantasy XIV. I love it. I love it when Final Fantasy XIV has that style of music. Hollow for Final Fantasy VII Remake. Stand By Me for Final Fantasy XV. By the way, shouts to Final Fantasy XV. Love that game. The credits song to Final Fantasy XVI. I love that type of music, and I love it in Final Fantasy, and I love it in Final Fantasy XIV, and I would love another song like that again. That's slower, more orchestral, and emotional. And I would absolutely love to see what Soken could cook up for a song like that. We kind of got a slow song like that for Endwalker, because they just brought back Answers but recontextualized it, which was absolutely brilliant in my opinion. But then also Vana's theme. So it's like, I know they can do it, but I would love another one. And I think when the game is able to properly incorporate music like that, it adds an element to the emotional investment that I have with the product that I don't get out of the game without music like that. I think music is a massive factor when it comes to storytelling in video games. And I love that style of music. Is it absolutely selfish on my part? 1000%. Do I care? Not particularly. So with that, I think I'll call the video there for the day. Thank you all for tuning in. My pleasure for making the video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out and helps support future content, and I greatly appreciate it. Stay safe. Have a great day. Leave a comment down below with your own hot takes about Final Fantasy XIV and 7.2, and I may react to them in a future video. Also, how do you feel about my takes? Do you agree? Do you disagree? I'd love to hear your thoughts, hear your opinions, and hear your perspectives. Leave a comment down below. Stay safe. Leave a like and subscribe if you liked the video and you want to see more content. I know I would appreciate it. Have a great day. Bye-bye, everybody. Until we meet again!